everyone. My name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. And today I want to talk about what to do when you or a partner loses interest in kink and what the reasons behind it may be. Whether your relationship started with vanilla dating or you met at a BDSM club, it can hurt to have your relationship suddenly change. So let's discuss what might be going on and how to move forward in a productive, compassionate way without anyone having to compromise on who they truly are. And first of all, as I always have to say, the only way, say it with me, to know what is happening is to talk to your partner. Hopefully, if you had some kind of kink relationship, you also had open communication and were in the practice of checking in regularly. But you may have fallen out of the habit, especially if there was tension or an elephant in the room, like noticing that you're not really doing kink anymore, and all of that was clearly not being addressed. Or you may have tried to talk, only to have your partner clam up and give you the old, I don't know, everything's fine, I guess? Or you may have been the one to shut down and lose every thought in your head the second your partner asked you, hey, is anything going on? Something seems off. The point is that nothing I say here will help if you can't have an honest dialogue with your partner. And you definitely cannot change anything if you can't have an honest conversation with yourself. At minimum, you shouldn't make concrete assumptions about their reasoning without verifying it with them. If you listen to this video and go, yes, that's exactly what they're doing, and run full steam ahead with that theory without pausing to check in with them, you will likely make any underlying problems worse. The goal here is just to get some ideas before you have a conversation, especially if your partner has trouble identifying what is going on internally for themselves. And naturally, if you know you're the one with the blockage, this video might help explain what has been happening to you too. So with all of that preamble out of the way, I want to separate the two main categories for why people suddenly lose an interest in kink: malicious and non-malicious reasons. Let's talk about the malicious reasons first, because thankfully, as far as I know, these are far less likely compared to the non-malicious ones. If you were around on Tumblr back in the day, or even like TikTok right now, you likely know of the showy, wannabe doms who declared something along the lines of, "Welcome to my dark twisted fantasy, little girl. Enter if you dare," in their bio, followed by approximately 592 aesthetic black and white photos of their hands, suits, and sports cars for some reason. Some of the people who presented themselves like this were in fact genuine dominants who were confused about what they needed to do to attract submissives. But a lot of them were also cynical manosphere adjacent types who heard that if you make a Tumblr blog and pretend to be a daddy, you can get a fragile 20-something to send you nudes within a couple of direct messages. Even just saying this out loud right now makes my skin crawl, but that was a thing that people did and are still doing. They never had any intention of keeping up the kink facade longer than was necessary to get what they really wanted. Unfortunately, though, such people don't only exist on the internet, as hard as it may be to believe, and trust me, sometimes it is. They do in fact walk among us, pumping gas and getting groceries with buy two, get one free coupons like everyone else. Though it takes a lot more dedication to show up to a munch or a play party with only the intention to cruise for freaky chicks, because, let's be honest, this is typically a pretty gendered experience, it does happen. People intentionally overstate or overplay their interests, experience level, and knowledge to get to desirable partners, only to bait and switch them once they get their target to transition to a committed relationship or a private non-dungeon hookup, even if they intend to keep up the charade for longer, especially if they're faking being dominant. It's hard to go on like that forever if your heart's not really in it. If you're wondering if this might have happened to you, I'd look for clues like, were they trying to escalate to private play as quickly as possible? Do they act very different in public or around kinky people than when alone? Do they frequently belittle other kinks or show a lack of interest in educating themselves? Does their behavior not match with their stated experience level? Do they get essential information wrong, like what a safe word is or what makes a submissive different from a bottom? Do they act in stereotypical ways, like they're following a script or copying a movie rather than being their authentic self? And did they try to leap into kink as quickly as possible, throwing out promises and titles that seem tailor-made to the interests that you mentioned in your profile or on social media? That is not an exhaustive list, but those are some of the questions I would think about. It can be hard to admit it if someone has tricked us. If we were strongly attracted to them, we may have overlooked or ignored red flags because they may not have been the kinds of red flags that we're used to looking for, because they're more about a lack of authenticity than potential bad behavior. And so we're not necessarily expected to treat those as seriously. While many people would describe the sort of person I just went over as a fake dom, this can happen from both sides of the slash. While less common, some people do pretend to be submissive if they think it can help them get to the kinds of relationships that they want. And, sad to say, there is a darker form of this malicious behavior too, where the goal is not just to get free nudes, access to sex, or a relationship, but using the tools of kink and power exchange for more insidious manipulation. This crosses the line from merely like manosphere adjacent into full-blown incel Andrew Tate red pill territory. There's an example of this behavior in a video I previously did about the manosphere, actually, in which a man, let's say, broke his partner's brain using a confused array of kink and red pill language to try and justify his behavior. People like this may even believe that they are kinky to a certain extent, if their only exposure to it has been the kind of forums where people discuss using BDSM as a tool for getting even with women, and how all females are inherently biologically submissive. Cue eye roll, if I didn't already give one. Others may know full well that they actually do have zero interest in kink, but believe that as men, they are meant to be inherently dominant because of what's between their legs. So they feel entitled to control and manipulate any woman they come across. Safe words, negotiations, what are those? These kinds of manipulators tend to hang out on dating apps away from the general BDSM community, who might be able to smell their BS from a mile away. But in the community, they tend to gravitate towards more extreme power exchange and DS groups, where their beliefs are more likely to be tolerated, especially online. They also tend to play a longer game in relationships. Rather than waiting for a couple of days or weeks before dropping the pretense of kink, they will keep it up for as long as necessary to allow all of their controlling behaviors to take hold, especially because they're often doing it to more than one person at a time. Lest I give any bad actors free ideas, I won't go into the specifics of what techniques they're likely to use in detail, but suffice to say, this type is more likely to encourage the use of intoxicating substances during play, will be quick to use controlling and possessive language, be more demanding of their partner's time, be invasive and try to root out as much privacy as they can, and they will use power exchange and emotional sadomasochism as tools to get someone addicted to them, often going after already vulnerable people who don't have a strong sense of self. And then, once the addiction is in place, they drop them like a hot potato. If you've watched Always Sunny in Philadelphia, this is the dentist system. This could happen through full-on ghosting, or they might simply punish their partner by no longer treating them as submissive, even gaslighting them about the nature of their relationship up to that point. The goal is to sow as much confusion and desperation as possible. If you're experiencing this, the loss of kink in your life is going to feel extremely painful. You may not even know if you can function on your own anymore. You may feel both desperate for and afraid of your partner. If this sounds like a situation you may be in or may have been in, I will put some resources down below you can reach out to confidentially to get help, and I am genuinely sorry if that is something you have experienced. It is devastating. But luckily, as I said earlier, these are unlikely to be the reasons why your partner or you have suddenly lost an interest in kink. There are tons of garden variety reasons why people's tastes change that have absolutely nothing to do with, poisonous manosphere logic. The number one reason why kink fades away on one side of a relationship is annoyingly simple. Real life creeps in. This is especially true when you live with a person or you have had an existing vanilla relationship with them. While you can absolutely have both a vanilla and a kink relationship at the same time, I've been doing that for nearly a decade now successfully, it can also make it difficult to not let regular life creep in. As I've discussed in my Dom disillusionment syndrome video, some people lose the spark that motivates them to do BDSM when they start to see their partner as a real, flawed, complicated person and not the perfect fantasy object they were once able to pretend they were. When they see someone make mistakes, struggle with real-life problems, or just act fully human, it sort of ruins the fantasy for them. And when that happens, they can no longer access the headspace they once did to make doing kink with that person possible. It doesn't have to be that extreme though. Sometimes it's not just about losing your ability to see your partner as the dom or sub you thought they were entirely, but vanilla life just becomes the default you operate in. You stop making time for scenes, stop dressing up, you forget rules and protocol, you don't go to events, you don't enforce anything in your relationship, you don't share the fantasies and ideas that once made you excited and hot for your partner. Sometimes this is just a short-lived blip and circumstantial. In long-term relationships, there are going to be times when vanilla life has to be at the forefront, and that's okay. But when the kink doesn't come back, or it fades away without any specific event connected to it, like an illness, that can be a cause for concern. Sometimes biological circumstances are to blame too. If someone is going through menopause, just had a child, or is starting hormone treatment, it's natural for their interest in kink to ebb and flow. You may not have the same relationship to BDSM as you once did if you're going through that stuff, and that's okay. We all change throughout our lifespan. Sometimes kink is a durable, permanent interest and an irreplaceable part of who we are. And for others, it's a bedroom interest that we pick up and leave at will. Even when we maintain an interest in kink, we may like different things or prioritize different parts of our kink identity. And that may look like losing an interest in BDSM overall, when what's really going on is we are no longer fitting into that pre-existing space that we once had with our partner. If we were once strictly submissive, but now we have an interest in switching and are preoccupied about how to make that happen in a monogamous relationship, but too nervous to share, of course that is going to feel like we are drifting away and no longer engaging in the relationship. But that's not everyone. For a couple of months or years, they go to events, they do scenes, they have a dynamic, but once the shiny new car smell wears off, it doesn't retain its luster for them. And rather than disappointing their partner with the news they aren't as into BDSM as they hoped they would be, they keep quiet about it and slowly let the kink parts of the relationship fade away. If the relationship was once strictly kink only, they may leap at the opportunity to transition into a normal vanilla life, shrugging off the kinky veneer entirely once they're able to go on normal dates and have regular intimate interactions. And finally, there's one last major reason for why people lose interest in BDSM, and that's because of love. Romance is a funny thing in BDSM. For some people, it is absolutely necessary to make their dynamic work. If there isn't love or the promise of moving in that direction, they aren't able to go as deeply or develop the trust required to make kink fulfilling for them. And yet for others, deep romance is at odds with what they get out of BDSM, and it actually impedes it. This is different than the disillusionment syndrome we discussed previously. Rather than their desire being blocked by the revelation that their partner is a real person with flaws, their desire is blocked by their affection for their partner. This can be especially true for dominants, who often feel a lot of guilt and shame about hurting the ones they love, because that is basically the social messaging they receive from day one. This can happen for subs and bottoms too, who may feel more comfortable with the distance of a friends with benefits or a play partner type relationship. After all, if you're just friends and not in love or building a life together, there is less at risk emotionally. You might feel more comfortable being direct about your kinks if someone's ability to reject you or judge you matters less. Someone who is in a more casual, public play-focused relationship may get a lot out of exhibitionism and showing off for a crowd. But that can become harder to keep up with the more real the relationship is, and the more you have to think about the other person on the other end of the flogger as part of your day-to-day life. And one day, the balance may tip, and they can no longer get what they once did because the vanilla love they feel overtakes and overrides any urge to do kink with that person. And there's 100 other reasons for why someone may pump the brakes on BDSM. Maybe they've decided that although they like kink, they need to give it up for a while they work on their mental health. They may be going through a depressive episode and none of the things that used to bring them joy do anymore, including kink. Maybe they're going to switch careers or get a new job that would put their private life under intense scrutiny. Maybe they're focusing on wanting to start a family. But no matter the reason, if you or a partner are suddenly struggling to feel the same way about BDSM as you once did, nothing will change until you talk about it and identify what is going on. It could be one big thing or a confluence of some of the factors I mentioned or something else entirely that I didn't. There may be a temptation to say, I don't know, to spare someone's feelings when you do actually really know what the answer is, but really do try to get to the bottom of it and feel comfortable talking about it. It can still be awkward, but you should be able to grit your teeth and get through it. Write it down on a whiteboard or a piece of paper if you have to. Send an email, send a text message. Draw it out if words are hard. Heck, share a song or a poem if that's what it takes to get the feelings across. I know it can feel impossible to have tough conversations sometimes, like your throat literally will not let you get the words out or your brain won't pass them along, and it's really annoying. But through being kind to yourself and gently recognizing the emotion, you can make it easier to say what needs to be said, and trust me, learning how to do that could be a video by itself, but hopefully, some way, somehow, you are able to make a conversation happen. You identify the sources of what's stopping the kink from happening, and what do you do once you know that? You have to evaluate if and how you want to bring BDSM back into your life. For some people, they realize that kink just wasn't for them, no matter what form. They wouldn't be being honest with themselves if they tried to force themselves back into trying kink again. But for others, they just need a hard reset. Maybe they realize that they were chafing, not being able to explore their switch side, or being a little girl doesn't sit right with their gender anymore, or there needs to be more separation between day-to-day life and kink activities. Regardless, I think a good first step is stripping everything back and returning back to one core thing you know you have the time for and that you both agree still sounds fulfilling. Maybe that's wearing a collar or going to a public play party once a month or using a special pet name with each other. Don't let yourselves go on autopilot. Make a concrete effort to have BDSM in your lives regularly. Get a babysitter, go on a staycation, and take the time to make your interactions special and fulfilling. Rather than just turning to each other on a Saturday afternoon and going, hey, want to do a scene? Maybe. Pre-plan what you can. Make getting ready a fun ritual, like going on a first date. Have a partner pick out your clothes. Go shopping for a new toy or an outfit together. Work on a playlist you want to play during your scene, during the week. Build anticipation with flirting, dirty talk, or sharing fantasies. But don't get attached to the idea that one scene or event will fix anything. The idea is to make time together special without putting pressure on achieving a certain outcome or goal. Focus on being present, exploring how your bodies feel together, and honestly expressing how you feel in the moment, breaking away from maybe whatever restraints or preconceptions you previously had about what your dynamic had to look like, because that can be really cloying. And sometimes all you need to see is that your partner is invested and present with you, and that's the spark that gets everything going again. And don't get me wrong, this is a really hard process, and it's not going to work for everyone. If one of you is saying, I want a 24/7 total power exchange relationship, and the other one is going, actually, that is really overwhelming for me and I can't do it anymore and I'm okay doing bedroom only and that's it, that is a pretty big compromise to have to try and make. And I don't like ending on the suggestion that, like, just break up with your partner, because I know that is not easy, and having to think about that is really scary. But at minimum, you should really be considering, can you make a compromise that you can actually be happy with long term? Because one of the big reasons for why people end up in these situations where kink fades away is it's a response to being pushed to doing something that doesn't really suit them, either too little or too much. And so instead of confronting that, instead of talking about it because you're afraid of losing the relationship altogether, you just go along and then slowly let everything else die because you're trying to subliminally communicate you're not happy. Obviously, that doesn't work. So you have to be able to think, okay, can I really be content with long-term a dynamic that looks like this when it's this far away from my ideal, or this far away, or like really, really close to it, but not quite? Some people have a pretty wide margin for what they're willing to compromise on because they're just more flexible. And other people are like, hey, I've worked really hard in my life. I have a very, very clear image of what would make me happy in a relationship. And I'm not okay compromising like way out to here. Maybe this much is fine, but not this much, right? And that's going to be up to you and your partner how much you are willing to make that happen. But I humbly beg you, please do not make compromises you can't really keep, because compromise can be a big part of a relationship on both sides of the slash, regardless of if you do power exchange or not as well. But you have to do it in a way where you're being honest about what you are actually capable of doing. And you're going to only end up in a situation where things are unhealthy again if you can't realistically set what you're able to do in a relationship and still be happy. So just really think about that. I think independently exploring, once you've identified, hey, this isn't working, we both think we want kink back, maybe in different ways, independently brainstorm, okay, this is what I think I want, these are my must-haves, this is what I'm willing to compromise on, and then come together and talk about it and see if you have enough in common to make a relationship worthwhile for the both of you. And depending upon your life circumstances, you also may be willing to compromise more on other things, right? Like if you're married, you have kids, obviously, this isn't as easy as like a breakup when you've known someone for like 2 months, right? So a lot to consider there, but that was what I would generally think about overall in this video, and hopefully it was helpful. I know it's really difficult when you had kink in your life and it was like a really big part of your relationship, and you look and you go, we haven't gone to an event in like 6 months and we haven't done a scene in how long? It's rough. It can be very rough, and hopefully this gave you, again, some things to think about. Talk to your partner, work on it, and I think with dedication, if it's meant to work, you can find something that will please both of you. And I would love to hear all your thoughts and questions in a comment down below. If you did enjoy this already, please do subscribe, because I make videos every week about different BDSM and kink related topics. And finally, if you want to support my channel, the best you can do is with Patreon. Link to that will be down below. If you do already support me there, thank you so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you all next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.